Hey there, welcome to the desert. I am here camping and hiking and just wandering around. It is spring, and the desert in spring is so incredible. The wildflowers are out, the cacti are blooming, and it's just such a special time to be here. And so I thought I would share it with you and go over 7 tips for desert camping, backpacking, and hiking. Tip number 1 is don't assume it's going to be hot. So a lot of times when people hear the word desert, they think just incredibly hot, sun beating down on you. And yes, there is a lot of sun in the desert, but it's not always hot. For example, when the sun goes down, since there isn't a lot of humidity in the air, it gets very cold at night sometimes. So I'll just tell you a quick story. I invited my brother out to come on a backpacking trip in southern Utah. I live in Utah. He had never been, and I told him, okay, pack warm clothes. Like I sent him a whole packing list, and he shows up with no jacket. He said he heard the word desert and just like tuned everything I was saying out and just brought like hot weather clothing, and he was freezing. Learn from his mistake and make sure that you really don't assume it's going to be hot, and bring some of those layers for when the sun goes down or if it happens to be a cloudy day. Tip number 2 is have a change of clothes. So if you are out hiking all day long in the desert, it's possible that you're gonna get pretty sweaty and your shirt might get really wet with sweat. And so if clouds do roll in or if the sun goes down, it's really nice to be able to take that wet piece of clothing off and put something dry on, because without the sun, it can get pretty cold, as we just talked about. So bring a change of clothes in case you really get sweaty out on the trails. Tip number 3 is to stay hydrated. I know this is pretty obvious, but water sources can be very limited in the desert. So if you're going backpacking, you need to make sure that there is a water source on your route, or pack in enough water for your entire trip. Keep in mind that in the desert, a lot of water sources are not year-round. And so this is information that you really want to try and seek out and understand before you go on your hike. For example, Nick and I went to Canyonlands National Park last fall, and we knew that the water sources were really limited there. We tried to get some information on it, and basically everything that we got was, I don't know, there might be, there might not be. So we ended up both packing in a ton of extra water that would sustain us throughout our entire trip in case we couldn't find any. Turns out there was a storm that came through a couple days earlier, and we were able to find water in some puddles, and it was totally fine. We had plenty of water. But the point here is, hydration is important, and water sources are not necessarily year-round here in the desert. So just do your research and kind of know what you're getting into before you get miles out on the trail. Tip number 4 kind of unfolds from number 3, and that is to be prepared to filter some dirty water. Sometimes the water source that you do find in the desert is a stagnant puddle of water. You have to be prepared to filter from that, and also know how to back flush your filter. So filters get clogged a lot easier when you're kind of filtering from that more like gritty type of water. So just know how to back flush it in case it does get clogged, because again, if you mostly go to alpine lakes or nice streams of water, it might not get clogged as quickly. And so just be prepared that you might actually be filtering from some gross water. Tip number 5 is to bring sun protection. So shade is very limited in the desert, and you definitely want to protect yourself from sunburn. When you're out in the sun all day long, it's so exhausting and so draining, and you definitely just don't want to get sunburned. I have the type of skin that gets sunburned pretty easily, and so I have a long sleeve hiking shirt that pretty much makes an appearance in almost every single video. It's that blue one that I'm always wearing. It has SPF protection, and I absolutely love it. I'll link to it below. Highly recommend it. But I also bring sunscreen with me. I bring SPF chapstick. You can bring a hat. You just really want to be protected and have some options in your pack to keep protecting yourself throughout the day as you're hiking or just spending a lot of time in the sun. Tip number 6 is to really pay attention to the weather before your trip. Storms can move in quickly here in the desert, just like they do in the mountains, and high winds can create low visibility by kicking up a whole bunch of sand. And then of course, thunderstorms have flash flood potentials and lightning. And often when you're hiking in very exposed areas in the desert. And so you really just want to pay attention to the weather and take those forecasts seriously when you're hiking. And lastly, tip number 7 is to keep an eye out for harmful creatures and plants that are in the desert. For example, there are a lot of cacti here in the desert and thorny bushes, so you just want to watch where you're stepping. And then there are a lot of animals that live in this land that can be harmful to you. So the point of me saying this is really so that you can go and familiarize yourself with the animals that are native to the area that you're going to be hiking, so that you know how to avoid them and keep yourself safe on the trails. I wish I could just give one of those saguaro cacti like a huge hug, because I think they are so cool, but you can't because they're full of thorns. All right, so there we go. 7 tips for hiking, backpacking, or camping in the desert. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and this beautiful space as the sun sets. Check out some of my other videos on backpacking and camping resources, and make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a video. I'll see you soon. Peace.